If you just started on the saxophone and you're still trying to figure out what reeds you should be using, what mouthpiece you should be using as a beginner, you're in the right place, my friend. I know it can be super overwhelming, super confusing because there's so many different brands. There's so many different strengths of reed. There's so many different mouthpieces. In this video, I just want to give you 2 recommendations for reeds and just 1 recommendation for a mouthpiece just to make it easy for you so you know exactly how to get started with playing the saxophone. So number 1, what is my recommendation for a beginner mouthpiece? Well, I always recommend to my beginner students to get the Yamaha 4C. This is a very affordable mouthpiece and it's perfect for beginners because it doesn't have a big wide tip opening like some of the advanced mouthpieces that are on the market. A lot of people are recommending these metal mouthpieces or these expensive ebonite mouthpieces, but they're just too advanced for beginners, and a lot of beginners don't realize that. So the Yamaha 4C is actually just a perfect starter mouthpiece. You may have already gotten a mouthpiece with your saxophone, but unfortunately the design of most of those mouthpieces that come with a beginner saxophone less than $1,000 is not going to be that great, and it could be the source of your problems when it comes to squeaking on the saxophone or not being able to get a sound out consistently. It could be that that mouthpiece you got with the sax is not very good. So I recommend the Yamaha 4C. It's less than $50. Sometimes you can get it for around $30, $35, and I recommend that mouthpiece for alto sax, for tenor sax, for baritone sax, or soprano sax. I'm not sponsored by Yamaha, I'm not affiliated with them, but I just know that this has been a great mouthpiece for my students inside my courses and inside my membership. And of course, over the last 20 years teaching saxophone privately, this is a mouthpiece I've always recommended. So if you don't like that mouthpiece that came with your saxophone and you're in the beginning stages, check out the Yamaha 4C. My name is Alexander Matthias from saxophonemasterclass.com, and on this channel I teach you all about how to learn the saxophone. Even if you have no musical background, even if you took up the sax later in life, you're in the right place. So make sure to subscribe, and if you want to get all my recommended products for beginner saxophone players, check out the Ultimate Saxophone Buyer's Guide. Just go to saxophonemasterclass.com/guide. There's a link below this video, and that's going to give you all my recommended products for alto sax, tenor sax, soprano sax, or baritone sax. And I even have links to my exact saxophone, mouthpiece, and reed setup, which is a little more advanced. So if you are in the advanced stages of learning saxophone, go and check out that guide and you can see all my recommendations. So once you have the mouthpiece, the next thing you want to think about is what reed to pair with that mouthpiece. There's so many different reeds, there's so many different brands, there's so many different strengths. You can go from a 1 all the way up to a 5 strength, and this can be really confusing. Which one do I use? What's even more confusing is that a 2-strength reed is not created equally among all the different brands. So a Rico Orange 2-strength reed is not the same strength as a Vandoren traditional 2-strength reed. It's super confusing, and that's why you need to check out the reed strength charts that some of these brands have. So for example, Vandoren has a reed strength chart for all of their different reeds. They have Java, ZZ, Vandoren Traditional, V16. They have all these different types of reeds that they sell, and even between those different styles of reeds, it's not the same strength. So a Vandoren Traditional 2-strength reed is actually not the same strength as a Vandoren Java 2-strength reed. It's super confusing, I know, so you got to check out those different reed strength charts. There's a link to a reed chart below this video, and some of those reed strength charts will tell you the differences between different brands as well. So what reed strength do I recommend for the Yamaha 4C? Well, first of all, I recommend Vandoren. I've been using Vandoren for 25 years. I started on a Vandoren Traditional 2 reed, and that's what I recommend for you as well. Now, if the 2-strength reed is too hard, you can go down to a 1.5. So some people need to start at 1.5, but usually a strength 2 reed is perfect for a beginner who's using a Yamaha 4C mouthpiece. So that pairing of a Yamaha 4C with a Vandoren Traditional 2 reed is perfect for beginners. So those Vandoren Traditional 2 reeds are actually cane reeds, but there's another type of reed you can get where it's a synthetic plastic, and there's a few different companies that make these reeds. They're a little more expensive. One reed is the price of maybe 5 or 10 cane reeds, but the reed lasts a much longer time. So a cane reed might last a few weeks, but a synthetic plastic reed could last months if not years if you take care of it and you don't chip it. And there's some great advantages to getting a synthetic reed, especially as a beginner. With the cane reeds, you can come across a lot of problems. The reeds are not consistent, they can get warped easily because of the environment. If it's humid, if it's dry, it can actually warp the reed, it can damage the reed, and you have to make sure you're protecting them as much as possible using a good reed case. And if you want a recommended reed case, I have one in the link below in my Ultimate Saxophone Buyer's Guide, so make sure to check that out if you're looking for a reed case for your reeds. So synthetic reeds will never warp, they're not affected, which is great because you're always going to get that consistency every time you play it. Of course, you have to make sure you're positioning the reed on the mouthpiece correctly, but if you're doing that, you're always going to have the same result. Whereas with a cane reed, you're not always going to get the same result. If you switch to another cane reed that's the same strength, the same brand, the same style, it could play completely different because of the nature of cane. Cane is very volatile in that sense, so sometimes you can buy a box of reeds with 10 reeds in it and 4, 5, 6 of them might not even work very well, and you might have to doctor them a little bit with different techniques. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but this is the problem with cane reeds, is that they're not consistent. So I recommend synthetic reeds for beginners if you're frustrated with that whole process of trying to switch out reeds, trying to change reeds. The only problem with the synthetic reeds, in my opinion, is that you're not going to get that full sound that you can get with a cane reed. Synthetic reeds don't always give you that pure full round sound, in my opinion. However, I do highly recommend them for beginners, especially when they're just trying to figure out how to play a few notes, how to play their first songs. So the synthetic reed that I recommend is actually called a Legere Signature Series reed, and I recommend the lowest strength reed for beginners, which is a 2 strength, and this is quite similar to the Vandoren traditional reed, especially on alto saxophone. So if you're trying to decide which reeds to get, I would choose either between the Vandoren traditional 2 reed or the Legere Signature reed strength 2 as well. And make sure you're pairing either of those reeds with your Yamaha 4C mouthpiece. If you have a different mouthpiece, if you have a mouthpiece that has a smaller tip opening, you might want to go for a stronger reed. If you have a mouthpiece that has a wider tip opening, then you might even want to go for an even softer reed so that you're able to vibrate the reed against the mouthpiece. When you have a wide tip opening like that, it makes it harder to vibrate the reed against the mouthpiece, and that's why people have trouble getting a tone from an advanced mouthpiece when they're beginners. A lot of advanced mouthpieces have a wider tip opening. So that's just my recommendations on what you should be getting as a beginner sax player. I'm not affiliated with either of these brands. I've just been using Vandoren traditional reeds for years, and I've always been recommending the Yamaha 4C to my students. And now since Legere came out with their Signature Series reeds, I've been recommending those as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this lesson. Remember to get that Ultimate Saxophone Buyer's Guide. There's a link below the video, or just go to saxophonemasterclass.com/guide. Check out this next lesson on how to put your reed, mouthpiece and ligature together, and that's going to really make sure that you're doing everything correctly so you can get a great sound from the sax.